All right, Eric Scott, how you doing, sir?
Doing well, doing well. Good to see you again, Duke. I still remember you. I didn't know we were going to be on video, so I was going to bring the picture in, but it would be you and Costa Dare and Brad and
Brad.
I on top of a mountain in Vermont, and we were up to my brother's cabin for Lead RA's retreat, and we were skiing. It was awesome.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's got to be my favorite memory from Elam.
No kidding.
It's got to be that weekend with you guys was just fantastic. I mean, it is the place where I met my wife, so that's up there too for
Yes,
sure.
sir. Yes, sir.
But yeah, that I felt like man, I felt so cool that weekend that I was invited by Eric Scott, brother Eric, as we used to call you.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's leave that one out.
how happy were you to get to shed the brother Eric title?
Really happy. So it's been a good thing.
But yeah, no, that was so much fun. I loved it so much. I have so many fond memories of that. Do you remember when we got up there and we couldn't even get up the driveway because there was like feet of snow?
I had a hard time finding the driveway to begin with, and then I looked around at you guys and I said, "You guys did bring boots, right?" And Brad's like, I did. I brought ski boots." And
Ski boots,
he
yeah.
proceeds to put his ski boots on, and he walked up. That had to be a half mile or so up that driveway to get up to the
Yeah.
cabin. I was laughing, and then I think Costa was pushing Brad down half the time going up the driveway.
Yeah,
So
it was intense. It was intense. Look, I was in the same boat. All I had was my snowboard boots, and those things
yeah,
were
that's
so
right.
big and bulky.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You were the snowboarder that weekend.
I
I
was the
remember that now.
snowboarder
Yeah,
in the midst of you
yeah, very
skier
cool.
people.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. What a great time that was, though, eh?
Man, what a beautiful cabin and
Mm.
yeah, I remember like fixing those like big breakfasts
Mm-hmm.
and everything. Oh man, that was
Yeah,
so good. It
yeah.
was such a good time. But yeah, well, thank you so much, man. Thank you for being here. Thanks for doing this. I didn't realize how much I missed you and Cindy until just a few minutes ago when we were connecting on here, just a few minutes before the podcast and kind of catching up on the past and everything.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
I'm so excited, man, to have you here. And it's just cool. It's been a long time for sure
Yeah,
since we've
yeah.
talked like this face to face, and I just really appreciate you being here. And yeah, it's great to see you.
Yeah, let's see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, how is Cindy first of all and the family?
Cindy's doing great. Good grief. When we were together back in the day, all of our kids would have been just finishing or in school, maybe still in high school, but they are all four married now. We
Amazing.
have eight grandchildren, which is awesome. I got to do
That's so cool.
my youngest daughter's marriage during COVID in my son-in-law's parents' living room, and so
Wow.
there were seven of us in the living room at the wedding, but we brought in his family from China. My son-in-law is from China originally. He's came here when he was 7 years old, and brought in other ones. So it was great.
Wow, that's so awesome. Yeah, so well, look, I wanted to say before we kind of jump into anything else,
Hmm.
just kind of sincerely from my heart is going to be my sappy moment, but I did let me see. We got disconnected. Here we go. I
I
don't know.
was catching a little bit of echo, but now I'm not, so that's good. Okay, great.
Awesome. No, I did just want to say, like, my time at Elam that I got to spend with you, it was really profound. I mean, you're someone who's had a really profound impact on my life,
Mm.
and I know that there's a lot of other people that have come through Elam and come through your ministry in the past that I'm sure could say, well, I know people that could say the same thing, but
Hmm.
you were like the first person in my life, really, to start pulling leadership out of me. I grew up as a Christian, and I had good pastors all my life, and good influences in my life and all of that. But you were the first person who really that I can point to that in a really practical way started pulling leadership out of me. And this thing in my mind when I was at Bible college. I don't know if you ever caught on to this or not, but I used to just really like beat myself up a lot. And I used to, really feel like I was disappointing. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
disappointing people. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was disappointing my friend. And there was just always, I always kind of walked around with this sort of, just self-imposed pressure to be a certain way, to perform a certain way. And there were times when I would walk into your office and I would just have a conversation with you, and I would come in and I would tell you about something that was going on. I don't know if you remember any of these circumstances or not specifically, but like I would tell you about something that was going on, and I would just be ready for like, all right, brother Eric, or excuse me, Eric, he's gonna let me have it. He's gonna tell me that I'm wrong and that I'm messed up. And like every time you would just say something that wasn't that at all. It was like the opposite, and it would just set me free. And I would just
Mm-hmm.
leave just feeling lighter and feeling empowered and feeling like, like I mattered. And it was just so huge for me early on, in those years at Bible college, and really sort of like the beginning stages of preparing for ministry and walking into ministry. And you gave me opportunities to minister on campus as like
Yeah.
the head RA and all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And
You did a great
man, so I
job
just
too.
want to say I really appreciate, just everything that you imparted into me, you and Cindy, what you imparted into me and my wife, and all of that. It was like really huge for
You're,
for
you're
us.
so welcome, Duke. I mean, it was really a privilege of ours to, yeah, to serve you guys. A
Yeah.
privilege, absolutely. One of the things you might remember this from RA training, but one of the things we really wanted to get across to you guys was never to freeze frame anyone
Mm,
and look to the distance in a person's life, because whatever's going on right now isn't who they are in particular. Uh, so we don't want to freeze frame a person there. Particularly, we don't want to freeze frame a person in an incident that occurs. And so, you may have come into my office different times feeling maybe ashamed over something or a poor decision that you made or whatever. But the thing
yeah.
was, is that you were just becoming. That's all. And so, what do you need in a moment like that? You don't need to be shamed. That's
Mm,
just ridiculous. What you need is you need encouragement, and maybe I don't know, maybe I helped you with a new thought or two to kind of think around that situation. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, it was Cindy and I's privilege to serve as deans at Elam. We both graduated from Elam. We met at Elam in 1981. She after getting out of YWAM, me after getting out of 4 years in the Air Force.
mm,
And, I got saved while I was in Germany 2 years. Well, yeah, I guess about 2 years prior to coming to Elam, and
wow.
Elam was a place where, I just cut my teeth basically spiritually. So.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Can you actually tell me, because I don't really know the story? Could you tell me about just like a little bit about how you got saved?
Oh man, that's a good one. Um, yeah, I love actually that you didn't send me any questions. You gave me no prep for this interview, and
Yeah.
actually, that's kind of the way I like to roll anyway. So well done, sir. Um,
You know what? I enjoy this sort of pressure of that in a certain way, and I just yeah, I like the
yeah,
conversational,
yeah. No,
elements of
it's
this. So
it's
I'm
it's a
glad I'm
good
glad
thing.
you appreciate it too.
Yeah,
Not everybody
yeah,
does, but
yeah. Well, it probably goes back to I was raised in a home. My dad was an alcoholic. I mentioned to you prior to the
mm,
interview, actually being sent to live with my granny and granddad in Trinidad, just a little island off of Venezuela, for a little over a year. My dad is a fifth generation Trinidadian, and
mm,
so you would have thought at that point that I would have maybe begun to see the dangers of alcohol abuse, and things like that, but it didn't. I actually started using alcohol in the fifth grade, and the amazing
wow.
feelings that it gave me were immediately addicting in a lot of ways. Started
Mm,
to use drugs in the eighth grade, and then that
Wow.
escalated, and my dad and I did not get along well, so there was a lot of issues going on there. There was 7 kids in our family, and pretty much all of them worked for my dad's company. My dad was a businessman. He owned a construction company that built bridges and dams. He was an engineer. One of his uncles actually sent him to Notre Dame to get his civil engineering degree and paid his whole way
Mm.
through. But
Wow.
he was a pretty exacting man. We were resolved later in life. That's another story in a really beautiful way.
Hmm.
Uh,
Wow.
I didn't realize you'd hit the emotional chords, but anyway, there you go. Um, yeah, so that was a little bit of my background heading into. By the time I graduated from high school at the age of 17, I was like, hey, I'm going to be an independent. I don't need my father's help. I don't need anybody's help.
Mm.
I'm on my,
Okay.
I can make it on my own. So I enrolled. I signed up to go to the Air Force, into the Air Force when I was 17. And off I went to basic training in Lackland, Texas, in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And then they immediately sent me to Germany.
Mm.
And while I was in Germany, all of a sudden I was exposed to just a lot more drugs, a lot more alcohol, and things got really out of control to the point where I was arrested for drug possession at one point. Thankfully, I wasn't thrown out of the military, but you would have thought that that would have stopped my using.
Mm.
It didn't stop it at all. Maybe for a week,
Yeah.
and then it was probably about really just a week or two later that uh, I started using early in the morning. It escalated throughout the day and culminated in 2 airmen, guys on base, finding me dying of a drug overdose at 3 o'clock in the morning on a sidewalk. I was passed out. They found me there. They saved my life that night, that morning, that early morning. I was basically choking on my own vomit and in a really bad place, and they saved my life that night. I remember waking up in their dormitory room the next morning with these 2 guys looking over me. I was like, "Who are you, and how did I get here?" And they explained to me how they found me, and so eternally grateful to those guys. I have no idea who they are to this day, but it was just probably within a week or two after that that the gospel was introduced to me, and I gave my life to Christ September 29th, 1979, in Kaiserslautern, Germany, at the Christian Servicemen Center. And my first pastor, Doug Elliott, led me to the Lord, baptized me in November, I think, that year. And it was, yeah. And then my son, he went into the Air Force as well. He's a major now, he's an officer. I think he's got 14 years in. He's stationed down in D.C. now. But when he was stationed in Germany, I went over to see him in Germany, and we put together what we ended up calling the Redemption Tour, and I got to stand very near the spot where I nearly died and
Wow.
proclaim Jesus, my victor.
Wow. Come on.
Yeah, it was awesome. And believe it or not, my original pastor, Doug Elliott, was still in country serving and leading servicemen to Christ, now in Stuttgart. And my daughter in law, who's very sneaky, set up a meeting with me and him. We were driving to Oberammergau for just, to visit that town, that village. We stopped into a Kentucky Fried Chicken, and and I said, "Come on, son, what are we doing here in Kentucky Fried Chicken? There's a lot better
All the way to
restaurants."
Germany for
Yeah,
Kentucky
yeah,
Fried
yeah,
Chicken. Yeah.
exactly. And he said, "No, Dad, you'll really love this particular Kentucky Fried Chicken." And we walked in there, and my original pastor. I'm actually looking for the picture right now. I don't know if I'll find it or not, but my original pastor met me at the door. He said, "You're Eric Scott." And I said, "And you are Doug Elliott."
Come
It was
on.
40 years later, my brother.
Oh man,
40 years later,
that
and
is so awesome.
here I am. If I find the picture, I'll show it to you. But it was just powerful, man. Oh dear,
Wow.
dear. Anyway, so
So did you get, oh man, that's so cool. Did you get saved? Like, were you led to the Lord? Was it in a church service or
it was
were
like a
you,
Christian movie, where at the end of the movie they gave like an altar call. You know how those things go.
yeah.
And but it was yeah. I went up and gave my here it is. Here I'll just I don't know if you can see this or not, but
Um,
can you see
yeah.
that?
Yeah,
Can you see
right
that?
there. That's perfect right there. Yep,
Yeah,
I see it.
that's my pastor.
So that's him saying, "You're Eric Scott."
Exactly. I mean, he literally said, "You're
Very
Eric
cool.
Scott." It was such a moment, man. I'll never forget it.
Wow, well, hats off to your daughter
Oh yeah,
for setting that
Laura's
up. That's
amazing
so cool.
person. Yeah,
That's awesome.
you
Man.
remember Laura, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. So were you invited to church or did you just, how did you end up there to,
yeah.
first of all?
Well, there was another guy on base who had also gotten busted for possession, and I knew he
Mm,
had come to know the Lord, and so he befriended me. And all the guys that I used to use with, they were like rats off a ship. They didn't want anything to do with me because to associate with me was to implicate them as users as well. And so, of course, in the military, you're in a whole different world. You get the security police are watching everything. You're definitely under Big Brother's watch, so to speak. And so, yeah, so they didn't want anything to do with me, which was great actually, because I desperately needed to change my people, places, and things. And so,
wow.
yeah, so I immediately got into a new apartment in Germany. My friendships changed overnight. They invited me to a service, and I came to know the Lord. And then as it turns out, there was actually a bunkhouse underneath the chapel where they had their services. So I would actually hitchhike to Kaiserslautern, which was about 80K away from my base, and I'd spend the whole weekend there. And they'd disciple me.
Hmm.
It
Wow.
was like, yeah, it was awesome.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. That's so cool. How big a deal is that, man? Like, this is an understated question, but kind of going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, and even what you and I were talking about off air before we started here,
Hmm.
of having relationships in your life where people are walking with you, kind of people that you can do life with. You said a second ago that you needed to change your environment because
Hmm.
that was that these people they had I guess a wrong motive, maybe even in it, or
Hmm.
to an extent that they wanted to disassociate with you, but that was the best thing for
Hmm.
you at that time, that maybe you didn't even realize, but that was the best thing in the world for you at that time, knowing like, all right, I gotta change up some relationships, I've got to change my environment, I've got to
Hmm.
get around people that are going to help me, they're going to help me grow. We were talking about coaching, and I want to get into that conversation a little bit with you. As we were talking, one of the things that came to my mind, I don't know if you ever heard the story of Babe Ruth with like his upbringing, and the first like few years of his life
Hmm.
were pretty rough, pretty dark.
Hmm.
He had seven. He was one of seven
Oh man,
um, brothers and
I'm gonna have
sisters.
to read about him. I love sports nonfiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so here's my understanding. Anyway, I'm not an expert, but here's my understanding. Five out of the seven all passed away.
Oh my.
And I don't know if some of it was like at birth. I'm not sure all the
Sure. Sure.
circumstances, but he was a very, just very at very young ages, like when he was like seven, just very
Hmm.
problematic, always getting in trouble. I guess they lived in a very, rough area. They're, dangerous streets and stuff like that. I don't even think it was a thing at the time, but now looking back, they think he had ADHD or whatever. But he was just like a sort of a
Sure.
problematic kid. And so, his life was not really on a good trajectory from the beginning.
Hmm.
But what happened was his parents, because they had a hard time dealing with him, they actually sent him away to like a Catholic boarding school type of a situation.
Mm.
And
Okay.
there he met a guy by the name of Brother Matthias, who really
Uh-huh.
became like a coach in his life. He started teaching him how to play baseball and really just kind of took him
Wow.
under his wing and
Yeah.
showed him that support. And like when he got older, he would look back to that and he would say like he's the reason why I'm in, why I've been successful,
Mm-hmm.
in baseball. Like he's the person that came alongside me. And it's amazing what one person in
Oh
your
man.
life could
Yeah.
do to
Yeah.
totally just change the trajectory of your life. So I guess what I'm asking is like how big of a deal, well, obviously it was a big deal for you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just share like your thoughts on that a little bit, like how big of a deal it is to have a mentor in your life or even just people that you're doing life with that
Mm-hmm.
can help you, grow and um, create a healthier environment for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Huge. These were people who were not having a transactional relationship with me. They were having a transformational relationship with me, which is
I
a
like that.
huge difference between those two things. Huge. The transactional relationship is like, I'm your pastor and I'm supposed to help you grow in Christ, or I'm, whatever. And,
Yeah.
like that just, people have antenna for that. You can pick up on that right away. If somebody feels obligated to be with me, I don't really want to be with them because I don't want that spirit. So there's so so people who intentionally spent time with me and were intentionally present with me. Like and nowadays it would be like I take my cell phone and I flip it over. I'm not looking at it. I'm not picking my cell phone up. I got to catch the latest text that came in or whatever. No, I'm with you right now because
Mm,
you're important. And so, and as a matter of fact, that's exactly where my cell phone is right now. It's turned over. It's off to the side. I am with you right now, and I realize I'm
love it.
probably with other people right now. That's fine, but primarily I'm with you.
Yeah.
And so there were people like Doug Elliott. I remember specifically one time I was sitting there reading Romans for the first time, and I happened to be on Romans chapter 6. And here's Doug Elliott, my first pastor, just walking by. He said, "What you reading there?" And I said, "Well, I'm reading this thing. I don't really know what it means." And had to do with baptism. And I was like, I was baptized as an infant. I'm a good Catholic boy. I went to 12 years of Catholic schooling, 5 years with the
Mm,
Jesuits, all that. And he says, "Well, let me just explain that to you." It was almost like the old story of Philip coming alongside the eunuch in Acts. It was just like that. But the point I'm trying to make is he was fully present. He was like he
mm,
like
it's
he
good.
like tuned in to my moment, you know. And then I literally was baptized the following Sunday. It was that
Hmm,
quick. I mean, it was just like, it was like he understood what a Kairos moment was.
hmm.
And I think that's really important for us as disciples and disciplers to understand the moment that we're in and to, you know, suck the marrow out of it, so to speak.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. I'm that's something that to be honest with you, that's something that I struggle with. Um I'm trying to get better at that in my life of like being present in the moment with whoever's in
Mm-hmm.
front of me, with whoever that I'm with. I can get really distracted in my mind by stuff. I think that this is something that happens to a lot of people. Like we're in one place, maybe we're with our family, but then we're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the stuff that that we're not doing on our job or in our
Yep.
ministry or
It's
something like
it's
that.
so
And then
common. Yeah.
yeah, being present, like you said,
And
in
it's
the moment
harder,
where
I
you
think,
are.
for your stage of life because you're in that stage of life, and it's a good stage of life. There's no problem with it, right? But you're in that stage of life where you're taking your mountains. You're going after things. You're going to be planting a church now in the Houston area. It's like, wow, that's awesome. But it's also very distracting.
Right.
It is. And so your mind is, kind of going in a lot of ways. However, I would just highly encourage you, even at this stage of life, to to become mindful of the moments that you're in, for one thing, and
Mm.
understand that there's this triangular conversation going on all the time. It's who you're with, who you're trying to serve in the moment. There's the Holy Spirit, and then there's you, and you're wanting to you know build that divine connection. So something of the kingdom can occur right in that conversation. Uh, and we just Cindy and I just finished a wonderful book by Greg McEwen. It's not necessarily Christian per se, but it's really good in terms of what we're talking about right now. The book's called
Hmm.
Essentialism, and he wrote
Okay.
another book called Effortless. But good 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 tomes on the idea of understanding what's most important now. What's
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Yeah. What? Say the name of the author again.
Greg McEwen.
Okay. Greg
Yeah, and
McEwen.
there's a very good interview that he does with Carey Nieuwhof. Are you familiar with Carey
Oh yeah.
Nieuwhof?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Carey, I listen to Carey weekly. I mean, he has been very, very helpful to me. And in fact, the interview he just did with John Mark Comer is I'm listening to it again this morning on my bike ride, and just sent it out to all my ministry leaders here at Worship Center because I just feel like it's a real valuable interview. It's a long play, he does long form interviews, but it's all good.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
love those.
Hmm.
I love those for real. Have you ever read a book called? It's called One Thing.
That sounds like a really good book. No,
Yeah.
I haven't read it, but I love the idea of boiling
Hmm.
things down to their simplest form and
Yeah, and
giving
that's
and
all
giving it the
that's
attention.
all it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of a lengthy book, but that's what it is. That's the heart of it. It's
Hmm.
okay. What's the most important thing that I can be doing? Kind of going through the cycle. Like, what's the one thing I need to do this month in
Hmm.
order to accomplish this goal? Then, okay,
Mm.
what's the one thing I need to do this week to accomplish that? And then just going down to like the day to the hour,
Hmm.
of like what do I really need to be? And I think that that's a principle. I think the book is written I kind of from a business perspective and stuff like that, but it's
Hmm.
something that we can apply, to anything as a principle. Like, what's the most important thing that I need to be doing right now, whether it's spending some time with the Lord or spending some time with my
Mm.
kids, spending some time, with this person that's in front of me. um, I
That's good.
think that and I kind of get into this type of conversation regularly because I talk to a lot of people that are in ministry
Hmm.
on this podcast, and I think that we can get so caught up with the stuff that we're doing, for God, and sort
Hmm.
of like the programmed kind of stuff and the stuff that we need to do in order to make the doing life with people possible, that
Hmm.
we can be that stuff can become a distraction, so that when we have opportunity for real ministry, where it's
Hmm.
so often real ministry, not that preaching and all that isn't real ministry, but so often like the real stuff that really matters, that actually brings like lasting change into people's lives, are those like face-to-face encounters with people, grabbing a coffee with somebody, inviting somebody over for
Hmm.
dinner, like those things that I
Huge.
think we can very often neglect
Yeah.
because we've
Yeah.
got so much to do.
Hmm.
We've got so much to do that we'll neglect the one thing like that
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
matters, in the life of this person.
It's an
You know,
interesting phrase in scripture is the simple phrase "on the way." On the way, Jesus, on the way.
it's good.
Some of
Yeah,
the most significant
it's good.
conversations I've had have been on the way. I remember Brad Kaler came to Elam a little bit early, so he was just kind of hanging around, and I think it was just his freshman year. And we had just gotten back from a vacation on the lake, and I'd forgotten something up at the cabin. And I saw him kind of hanging around, and I said, "Hey, Brad, what are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I just kind of got here early." I said, "Well, hey, jump in the car. I got to run back to this lake house and pick up something I forgot. We can just talk." And that led to a lot of things, and he
Yeah.
ended up becoming a lead RA like yourself. And he's actually a lead pastor now up in Rochester and Brockport. So, I mean, it's been
Yeah.
I love watching you guys grow, by the way. It's like, bar none, the best. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah, isn't that not that's my favorite thing, of ministry is, just seeing somebody that you've had an opportunity to just speak into their life, pour into
Hmm.
their life, and to see them advancing, in whatever it might, whether it's ministry or, or something else, you know what I mean, as
Sure,
far as a
sure, yeah,
career
yeah.
or
I mean,
whatever, but to just see
yeah,
growth in their
yep,
life. Um, it's
yeah,
huge.
absolutely.
It's so good. Yeah. That whole thing about just letting someone into your life, letting somebody into your world and letting them be a part of it.
Hmm.
That's so kingdom. It's so representative of what Jesus did, like you
Hmm.
said, on the way to,
Yeah,
and just kind of being thronged by the crowds, but looking up, hey,
yeah,
Zacchaeus, come down, I'm going to eat in your house.
yeah.
Just stuff like that, man. Just like
Oh,
getting
it's
involved in people's
huge.
lives.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
to
Jesus
yeah,
was so busy. He could have never run out of things to
exactly.
do in ministry, but it was
Hmm.
like, I'm going to go to your house today.
Yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
be with you because it matters.
And I think it's important to also note whose houses he didn't go into. Seriously,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's Henry Cloud says there's three people in the world. There's wise people, uh, there's foolish people, and there's evil people. And for the evil people, he says guns and lawyers. That's a little dramatic, but the thing is, we need to be careful. There's a as my wife says, a pendulum to things. There's people you want to the Holy Spirit saying, bring them into your life, include them, and disciple them, or whatever, be mentored by them. But there are other people, that I've had to be careful with, even people who
Mm.
I thought were leaders. I had to actually put a restraining order on one individual at one point because he
Wow.
just became a very dangerous individual. So
Yeah.
I guess I just want to provide a little bit of balance there too. It's not
Sure.
like
Sure.
a blank check. We need to
Yeah,
steward
absolutely.
our time, uh, and our energy really well. It's important.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely had people in my life where either I knew I couldn't trust them or I didn't know if I could trust them, and so like I'll come to you. Like, I'll
Yeah,
come
yeah.
to your house rather than bringing you into my house. I don't know if I want you to know where I live just yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
let's see where this goes first.
That's
Yeah,
wise.
I definitely think that there's balance to that. But yeah, and also just kind of with everything, just being led by the Spirit, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can't invite everybody into your life, but kind of being aware, like those little like Holy Spirit nudges, just being
Mm-hmm.
aware of what he's doing and what he's breathing upon, and who he's calling you to, speak, whose life he's calling you to speak into right now for the season that you're in, and
Yeah, that's
stuff
good.
like that. You know, I
Yeah,
think that's all
I
key.
love a little phrase my pastor has. He says, "You have what you need for the season you're in."
That's great.
That is an encouraging thought to me. In fact, I write it on my whiteboard because I had just a lot of challenges this year between COVID and covering for some other
Right.
ministers who were on sabbatical and so forth. And I just wrote to myself, Eric, you have what you need for this season.
That's
It's been
good.
encouraging. I'm just leaving that up there for a while.
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put it on my whiteboard over here too,
There you go.
because yeah, and I think we can get unbalanced. I know I like get out of balance with stuff and try to go beyond the season that I'm in. And
Mm-hmm.
then when stuff's not working, it's like, well, why is this not working? Okay, well, maybe I need to recognize like this isn't what God is doing right now,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
that's
again, coming
good.
back to those things that matter and the priorities, you know.
Yeah.
So, what are you? We haven't talked about this yet.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us just a little bit about what you're doing now in up there in Lancaster, PA.
Yeah, Lancaster, PA. So we're at a church called Worship Center, started 44 years ago by a formerly Amish man named Sam Smucker. He's in a
Hmm.
very large family. I don't even know how many kids, but it was over 12, I'm pretty sure. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And anyway, he came to know the Lord and went to school at Rhema, and
Oh, cool.
one of the individuals here in Lancaster, a gentleman by the name of Mel Hurst, and there were some others involved too, called him up while he was in Bible school and asked him if he wouldn't consider consider pastoring a church here where people could freely worship. There just really wasn't. It was more like denominational type churches and worship at that time, and they
Okay.
wanted to. They were being filled with the Holy Spirit and wanting a more expressive sense of worship, and so he agreed to come back. I think it started in a motel room, you know,
Hmm.
and now we're on a large property that includes a counseling center that we don't they're separate entities from the church, but they rent from us now. A
Okay.
counseling center called Upward Call, a horse therapy farm, actually.
Oh, so
Yeah,
cool.
it's really cool. Yeah, for people with developmental things in the horses, bonding, and all that. So that's pretty cool. And then there's a K through 12 school where the church used to meet. And then now the property that we built in 2010, which by God's grace is a $20 million property that'll be paid off probably by the end of this year, which is really exciting. We've got an
Wow. Come
amazing,
on.
amazingly generous
Mm,
congregation here. Just beautiful people.
that's awesome.
And yeah, so but my responsibility here is the care and discipleship pastor. So um, I oversee a group of what we call our pastoral care team, which is about 16, 17 pastors. We all share the pastoral load. Pastor on call, we take a whole week where any kind of like walk-ins or any kind of issues that come up, that person's in charge of handling that. And it just involves a lot of different things, pastoral care, and then I
Yeah.
had they gave me the freedom to write a discipleship course that we call Faith Essentials, and I'll be doing, I think, my seventh or eighth, well, maybe more now, iteration of that starting this Sunday, and I've got a full classroom, bulging out of the classroom actually starting this
Wow.
Sunday, and then we filmed it just recently as well, so I'm excited about that. But and this last week in Wisconsin, I was able to share that curriculum with two other churches, and they may or may not use it. We'll see. But it's just exciting to just be a part of kingdom growth, and we're just very
Mm,
generous and open-handed with everything because it's all been given to us, right? It's not ours.
yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
for us to steward. So
Yeah. That's so good.
I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I tried.
No, you did. That was perfect. You did a great job. And that's so true. The last thing that you said there, I think that that takes a lot of pressure off if we let it. If we have the right perspective that we're just stewarding God's things. We're
Hmm.
administrating the things that He's placed in front of us, that He's placed into our hands right now. But like this ministry, like none of this belongs to us. Like it's not it's not ours. It's all
Yeah,
His. And so I think that that helps. That could help us, stay balanced and not burn out and stuff like that when we
yeah,
recognize that
yeah.
this
It's good.
is ultimately on you, God. Like
Hmm.
I'm not spinning my wheels trying to build something because like I need that to be successful, or I need
Mm.
that to be considered, good
Ooh.
enough or worthy enough or whatever. I mean, I'm just telling you, man, some things that I've
No,
struggled with
you're
in my mind.
you're hitting
you
the
know?
oil gusher now. You're talking about trust
Yeah.
structures. Where
Yeah.
do you find what do you perceive brings you happiness and joy?
Mm,
And a lot of times that's built on something that's not really sustainable or the Jesus way, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of cultural norms out there that we've been discipled in for years that aren't accurate. What brings true
Yeah.
joy and peace, and ultimately, and the older you get, the more you realize this. It is, and I know it sounds trite. It's the Sunday school answer, but it's Jesus. It's
Yeah.
Jesus. He's the only one that can bear the weight of our trust and actually come through with the real joy, the real hope that the human heart needs to make it in this life. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I was talking to Fount Schultz recently on
Oh,
he was a
found.
guest
I
last
love
week, I
him.
think it was last Monday maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, he was on, and that sort of came up what you just said,
Yeah.
and he was like, as a reminder, he's like, yeah, and not just Jesus in terms of theologically, but
Yeah.
Jesus in terms of personal,
Yes.
personal
Yes.
relationship and experience, and walking with him, and really, and revelation, deeper revelation of who
Mhm.
Jesus is. I love what
Wow.
I think it's First Peter 1, it's either 13 or 15, and it says, Re- um, think soberly and rest your hope fully
Mhm.
upon the grace that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
And I love that statement, because it's like the more revelation we get of Jesus,
Mhm.
the more we're empowered to walk in and experience the grace that he's made available to us.
Yes.
They go hand in hand. So like
Yeah.
we'll experience more grace, more freedom in our lives to the extent that Jesus is revealed to us.
Yeah.
Not just as
Yeah.
far as like, oh, I know this about you, or this is, some theological perspective, which all,
Mhm.
those things have their place, but it's like, who are you really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who are
Wow.
you? And walking with him daily, and walking with him experientially, and the result of that is that more of him is, we're beholding him as in a mirror, the glory of the Lord, and we're
Yeah.
transformed into the
Wow.
same image. And it's just, yeah, like you said, it is the simple answer. It really
Mhm.
is. It's like with working out, like we
Mhm.
can, or like wanting to lose weight and be healthy and all this stuff. Like there's all these like hacks, like little
Mhm.
hacks that we try to do. Like, oh, if you just do this, you just do that. The answer really is, be active, stop eating so much bad stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like those are the simple answers that we all really know when we get down to it.
Mhm.
And I think that we try to almost hack Christianity sometimes, and hack our walk with the Lord. It's like really what it is, like pick up this book, pick up the Bible,
Eat
and
it.
not in just like a purely religious way, but
Yeah, yeah. No,
connect
it's
with him,
good.
talk with him. And
Mhm.
it's like, again, like that simple, I come back to this all the time, the simple thing that I learned in Sunday school and all the songs that we used to sing was just
Mm.
trust and obey,
Yeah, yeah.
trust and obey, trust and obey. And he's so worthy of our trust if we'll just walk
Yeah.
with him, you know.
Yeah, it reminds me of that passage. I think it goes something like, the people of Israel, they knew the acts of God, but
Come on.
Moses knew his ways.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow. Do you remember? I don't know if did you have Fount Schultz as a professor?
I didn't. So we found out his last semester was spring 2004,
Yeah.
and I got there fall 2004. So we just missed each
Oh,
other.
he was amazing. He would always start the class with like a hymn, that he would, or a psalm. I think it ended with, "And joy comes in the morning." I don't know
Mm,
why. I always remember that, but joy comes in the morning. He had an understanding, and one of the things I loved about Elam is although they were definitely a Pentecostal school, they also understood the theology of suffering, the fellowship of the sufferings of Christ. And
wow.
I just think it's really important to walk in the balance of that, both the miraculous and the understanding that there is suffering to be embraced at times.
Mm.
So anyway,
Could you go into that a little bit deeper?
yeah, you,
Not
and you
that I want
probably,
to focus on suffering
yeah,
necessarily, but
no, I
but
understand.
just like as far as like what that means, and
Sure,
how
sure.
how that becomes practical in our lives.
Sure, sure. Well, I'll take you to a quick season in my life. This all happened in a 6-month period. Started with the flooding of our basement in Kansas, and that was to become the smallest of the problems.
Mm,
Following that, I heard of that my brother called me to let me know that my dad was passing, and I was
mm,
to take a group of teenagers with some other adults on a mission trip to the Navajo Reservation the next day. But by God's grace, I found a young farmer who was willing to take my place. The harvest wasn't there yet, so he took my place on that mission trip. I flew to Rochester, and I got to spend time with my dad, and it was powerful. I had the privilege
Wow.
of serving him communion. It was, as I said
Mm.
earlier, we had a restored relationship. Came back from that. This all happened in a 6-month period. And our intern, who was a sophomore in Bible college at the time, who actually had lived with us the summer before, and he had married a young lady that we had the privilege of helping bring to the Lord. But 6 months into Bible school, and after he and I discussing that I would mentor him in taking over the youth ministry that we pioneered, we received the phone call that he had died of a pulmonary embolism. Six
Oh
months,
man.
6 months into their marriage. It was
Wow.
devastating to his bride, devastating to us. We drove right out to Nebraska and just, wept with her.
Mm.
So that was rough. And then
Yeah.
all this happened in 6 months. And so got home from that, and I was out. I like to bicycle. Most mornings I'm out cycling, and I came back from my ride, and Cindy was kind of like just stretched out on the stairs and crying, and I was like, "Oh, what's going on?" Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I got this mixed up a little bit. Just prior to losing the intern, when I found her like that on the steps, it was her finding out that our intern had passed away. But
Mm.
just prior to that, our daughter Natalie had her appendix had burst, and we didn't know it. We were in a small country area where the hospital didn't really understand what's going on. She ended up having to be emergency ambulance to Kearney, Nebraska, where they
Wow.
ended up doing emergency surgery. We very nearly lost her. Actually,
Wow.
it's a long story.
Yeah.
And
How
then
old was she at the time?
she was only 11 or 12. She got down to
Mm.
79 pounds, as I recall.
Wow.
It was, she didn't eat for 3 weeks. It was like super intense. And this is one of the most
Mm.
lively people you could imagine. He's doing great now, has a little boy named Booker and wonderful husband. But anyway, that was just crazy, and I know this sounds horrible, but even on the heels of that, one of the young men that I'd been ministering to and had prayed with him to receive Christ committed suicide. And I mean, it
Yeah.
was just like, it was so much suffering, and I just was
Yeah.
like, what on earth? And I remember calling Stacy Klein, an
Hmm.
amazing man of God, or the dean of
Yeah.
students at Elam Bible Institute.
Yeah.
I mean, so revered. I mean, it just, and I just
Amazing.
called him and said, Stacy, I got a town kind of relying on me right now. I'm in the midst of doing this funeral for this teenage boy, and I am a wreck, and can you help me? And he was a tremendous help to me. In fact, he ended up writing a book called Suffering on Suffering. Um, I think that's Suffering Loss. That's the name of the book by
Mm.
Stacy Klein. Fantastic book. I mean, he read
Yeah.
like over 100 books prior to writing that one
Mm.
himself. It's a very, very good book. So that was helpful, and it actually led to the invitation we received from him to come to Elam, and that's how we ended up coming to Elam, and how I became the dean, and you became one of my lead RAs. So so yeah, so there was a suffering that was involved in that, and for me, for somebody to come along and just be like, I'm going to pray for you now, and all the suffering is going to go away. That
Right.
wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had to walk through that. I had to endure that. My wife had to endure it. Others who were involved, the parents of the boy who committed suicide. Oh my gosh, suffering!
Mm.
I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so, but you know what? It my youth ministry professor at Elam, Tony Maturana, amazing guy as well. I'll never forget what he said to me, to our class one time, because he'd been through some tremendous suffering of his own. He said, look, class, however you addressed us, I honestly don't trust anybody without a limp. I was just like, what does that mean? Because at
Yeah.
that point in my life, I don't think I'd really suffered a whole lot. I was kind of like, you know, happy-go-lucky person. Pretty much hadn't endured a ton of suffering up to that point in my life, and yet, man, when he said that, I'll never forget it. So that suffering and embracing it and grieving the things you need to grieve and really realizing that this is part of life on this side. It's not going to be perfect and great until we get over to the other side with Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's just our reality. There's going to be
Yeah.
miracles along the way, and I'm going to keep praying for them.
Sure.
I pray for
Sure.
people to get healed all the time. I'm going to keep praying in faith, just like David did for Bathsheba's child. But I'll tell you one thing. All that suffering and other suffering that's been endured along the way, I'm sure for you too, has been very, very useful, because the comfort from which, what First Corinthians says is right, the comfort from which I've been comforted with, I now can comfort others, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So nothing's wasted.
Yeah.
Nothing's wasted.
Yeah. That's so good.
I'm so thankful for men like Stacy, who mentored me in the way, and I've not endured anything close to the suffering he has. I'll tell you that. But
Mm.
I appreciate men like that. They're
Yeah.
real. They're not pie in the sky Christians.
Hmm. Well, something that I see in your life and in somebody like Stacy Klein is a softness and a sensitivity before the Lord. Um, when we go through suffering, I think that we have a couple of different options. We can allow it to harden us,
Hmm.
or we
Yeah,
can allow it
true.
to sensitize us more to the Lord,
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I think that so often when we go through stuff, just talking in generalities here, but so often when we walk through stuff that's tragic or perplexing or whatever,
Hmm.
one of the books that impacted me, like as far as a book that had an immediate and drastic impact on my thinking, uh, the number one spot would be Bob Sorge's book, Pain, Perplexity, and Promotion.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Wow.
it I really recommend that book. It
Talk
it
about a
walks
guy who's been
through.
through suffering, right?
Yeah,
Whoa.
exactly, exactly, and it walks through the book of Job,
Hmm.
and in a profound way that I had never looked at. So many things I'd never looked at from that perspective before. But anyway, I think that um, when things come into our lives, I think that so often we have a tendency to, we can blame God for it. We can get a hard heart over it. We can allow those things to happen, or we can recognize like that God is not the source of those things, right?
Mm.
First of all, but
Yep.
recognize that, like you said, the verse, the fellowship of his sufferings, that when I go through suffering, not that he's causing it or he's the author of it,
Hmm.
but when it happens, like you said, he doesn't waste anything. He's so
Hmm.
good at redeeming every situation.
Hmm.
And I identify with Christ in that suffering because he suffered for me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
suffered in my place. And so it's not like this thing that, well, if God was so good, then this stuff wouldn't be happening. It's not what it's about at all.
No, it's not.
I
It's
get
a
to he
shallow faith, man.
identifies with me.
Yeah.
He
Yep.
identifies with me where I'm at right now. He identifies me, in this pit of whatever, this despair, frustration, anxiety, whatever it is. He's there with me, and if I can keep that perspective, then the there's the growth that comes out of that, and like you said, the ability now to be able to identify with others in their suffering, and to be
Mhm.
somebody that can help to point them to the source,
Mhm. Mhm.
to the comforter, and sort of be like in that relay position to take people by the hand and help them connect with the Holy Spirit. But yeah, so often it's just It's not like, let me pray and take all your problems away. Let me
Right,
say a
right,
word here and take all
right,
your problems away. No, so
right.
often it's just being there with people, you know?
Yeah, that's one of those trust structures that needs to be pushed out of the way because it's a deceptive trust structure. This sort of like Jesus is there to make me healthy and wealthy. No, no, he's not.
Mm,
He's there to save you, and salvation is so all encompassing. We'll get to the other side one day, and it'll be glorious. I tell you, I
yeah,
cannot wait. There's so many people I can't wait to see again. But on this side, the
yeah,
fact is, Adam and Eve sinned, and it pervade throughout the universe, and is still purveying, and yet the kingdom's here at the same time. It's such a mystery, isn't it? I just, I don't, I have so many questions for the other side, don't you?
yeah. I wonder when we get there. I wonder if we're still gonna care. That's what I always think about. Because right now we care so much about understanding
That's
things and
true.
wanting more. I wonder,
Yeah,
like, when we get there, if we're even gonna care still.
yeah. I wonder if we'll
You
walk
know
up
what I
to him,
mean?
it'll be kind of like, yeah, you know what? Forget it.
I
I'm
have a
good.
bunch of questions, Jesus, but right now I just need to
It's good
sit
to be
here.
here. Yeah,
I just
that's
need to be
good.
Mary and just sit at your feet. You know?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's so good. I oh man, he's so good to us. He's so good to us, in the midst of what we're going through. And I think that if I believe I believe a lot in just empowering people to go after their dreams and purpose. I believe that
Hmm.
God's interested in us sort of uh demonstrating his goodness to the world around us, even through things like, being prosperous and being successful and things like that. I think that that's part of it. But yeah, like you said, if I'm if I'm struggling in my life, or things are not working out the way that they should, or I'm going through something that's completely has nothing to do with me, just a tragic thing happens or whatever,
Hmm.
if that causes me to then, walk away from the Lord, or turn my back
Mm.
on him, or to whatever, to walk in, maybe not even, not necessarily, I'm saying completely turn my back on God, like leave the faith completely, but if it causes me to
Hmm.
lose faith, then it just tells me that my faith was misaligned in the first place,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
And God help us to align ourselves properly. The mercies are new every morning. I love that thought.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And at the same time, I think, I encourage people too, like, God knows where you are. So
Hmm.
if you're in one of those situations and you are mad at God, or you are blaming God for something that
Hmm.
happened or whatever, like, just be willing to talk to him about it.
Sure,
He
He
already
can
knows it
handle it.
anyway. He can handle it for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you look
And
at the
I think we all
Psalms.
go through that,
Totally.
right? I mean, I think we all do
Sure.
that. We all have those questions like, why, Lord? And like David throughout the Psalms, how long? Like,
Hmm.
how long, Lord? How long is this going to happen? And having those questions, right? Like, why do I see the wicked prospering and the right? Like, why do I see
Mm.
these things happening? And there's nothing wrong with, I think, having those questions, but I think as long
No.
as we allow it to over time, like, lead us into that place where we're constantly coming back to Him, and allowing it to sensitize us more to him by
Hmm.
recognizing that he's always good, that he's always faithful, that he's always what we need, and not allowing it to, create those calluses on our heart that
Hmm.
ultimately cause us to walk in, disbelief or unbelief for, who he
Yeah,
is.
yeah. Definitely, definitely.
So
Yeah,
yeah, man. Well, thank you for sharing
yeah. It's been really
some of those
good. And
things. It's just, I
I was
know
meant.
it's heavy stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I was mentioning to you earlier that my wife's the reason why we're here at Worship Center is because of the coaching culture that she has built in to curriculum and all of that, and that's why we're here at Worship Center, because she was training a bunch of young adult leaders in a new ministry that Bryce Taylor had started here called the Living Room, which attracts about 400 to 500 young adults here every Tuesday night.
Wow.
And yeah, it's awesome. I mean, Bryce pioneered a fantastic ministry, right? But she was helping train his leaders in the coaching culture, and started Bridges coaching a number of years ago. But at first I kind of just sort of fought it a little bit. I really didn't want to. I am a traditionalist who doesn't really.
Uh-huh.
I like, hey, if it works good now, let's keep it going. But things really weren't working great for me. I was taking on more and more water, so to speak, in terms of probably caring for people more than they were even caring for themselves. In a sense, I was taking more
Mm.
ownership for their discipleship than I certainly should have been. I actually was believing a lie for a long time, Duke, and the lie was I'm responsible for how people respond to my ministry. So you can imagine when this young man committed suicide. Oh man, I was taking water on my boat like crazy. It was
Sure.
just
Yeah.
crazy. So I had to replace that lie with, simply I am a faithful son of God, and my responsibility is to be faithful to him and what he's asked me
Mm.
to do, but responses are all up to others. And so then the coaching paradigm that my wife taught and wrote curriculum for and has videos for and all that really helped me to understand that the weight of a person's life and their discipleship process is really their ownership. It's not mine. So the best thing I
Mm.
can do as a discipler is to be observant of what the Holy Spirit's doing in another person's life by listening. Josh Finley said once, I really liked his thought. It was very simple. He just said, listening is loving. To listen to a person is to love a
Mm-hmm.
person. And
Yeah.
so, listening to people and then asking powerful questions, and really, I think just learning not to infantize people. And what I mean by
Mm.
infantize is like being in that mode where you're telling people what to do. Well, you ought to read Psalm 91 now. If you're not feeling safe, you should read Psalm 91. Nobody wants to hear that kind of thing. You just feel like you're being chided or shamed into reading scripture or whatever.
Mm.
But if you're really listening to the person, and you're asking powerful questions, it leads into a much more transformative type of a conversation, right? And of course, the
Yeah.
coaching paradigm then does also lead to like building smart goals and things like that. But ultimately, the person's responsible for their action steps. It's on them. And so just been learning over the years uh, to really relax more and just enjoy the privilege I have of discipling others. But at the end of the day, I'm going home and I'm loving my wife and loving my kids and enjoying life. I used to even have like in my mind an imaginary garbage can that sat right next to my front door as I came in the house,
Okay.
and I would just sort of like do a mind dump. I'm like, okay, the day is done, and now I'm entering into my home to be with my family, and they get to get the
Yeah.
best part of me, because I'm not going to be one of those pastors who has orphan children. That's just not going to happen.
Wow. Wow. Come
So,
on. I was talking to Joe Courtney recently too, and he said
Joe,
that Joe Courtney,
I
man.
love that guy.
It's all full circle. Let me tell you, that's been the best thing. The greatest joy me like doing this podcast has been
Hmm.
reconnecting with so many people, a lot of Elam people, and then I've had a chance to connect with some new people that are new friends now, new
Yeah,
people
yeah,
that
it's
I just
beautiful.
reached out to or whatever. I've got a lot of connection with people on like LinkedIn
Hmm.
and different social media platforms where yeah, I'll just see people that are doing stuff I think is interesting and I'll reach out. But one of the greatest things has just been reconnecting with people from Elam days that I've just been, disconnected from because I
Sure.
lived in Mexico and then I've been way down here and
Yeah.
it's just been it's been crazy. But yeah, so I reconnected with Joe and he told me that like the trash can thing
Mm-hmm.
was very in line with something that his father used to do.
Oh,
So his father, his name was also Joe, and he
okay.
used to get home from a hard day of work or whatever, and he'd get home and he would basically like put his key. I think this is how he described it. He'd put his key in the door, but before he would turn the doorknob, he would just say to himself, "You're not done yet, Joe.
Mm.
Like your
Ooh,
day's not done yet," you
wow,
know?
I love
And
that.
just that simple reminder, and then go
Yeah.
inside and recognize that, as hard as my day's been, as much stuff as I'm carrying, the weight of the
Mm-hmm.
world so often on our shoulders, but walking in and recognizing like I've got a wife and I've got children,
Yeah.
um, and
Wow.
they need me. They need my attention too.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know what I just went through all day, and they don't
Exactly.
know.
That's right.
And they, you know what I mean? And to them it's uh they have they have needs too. And so yeah, that's such a good point, such a good sort of mind little mnemonic there of
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like letting those things that really do weigh down on us. I think that a lot of people that are maybe not in ministry, that have never been in full-time ministry, don't understand. I mean, how could they understand some of the weightiness of what we
Sure.
as pastors have to often walk through with
Mm-hmm.
people and stuff like that. And but yeah, just that's really good. That's really key, being able to allow those things to not internalize everything,
Sure.
so that
Sure.
we can still be present for the other things, part of our lives that matter.
Yeah, Jesus was really clear, that to put on his yoke is literally easy, and in early
Yeah.
days I used to think that the yoke was actually a two yoked thing, or I mean a single yoked thing, and Jesus was kind of in the back whipping me into shape, like, come on boy, work a little harder, and
Yeah.
it's like, and I had to get set free from that performance mindset. And then I remember walking into a barn one day in Kansas and seeing the double yoke, and I thought, oh wow, I thought it was a single yoke, and the truth of the matter is it's a double yoke, because I'm in the yoke, but Jesus is in the other yoke, and he's the master oxen, so to speak,
Mm,
and I'm to pace my life with him. I'm not to get ahead of
that's
him, I'm not
good.
to drag behind him, I'm just simply to pace with him. He's my example. He's, you know I'm in his apprenticeship program, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, Eric, before we run out
yeah.
of time completely here,
Hmm.
I want to let's just talk a little bit. We started going into the coaching thing a little
Hmm.
bit.
Sure.
I want to, if you could just tell us a little bit about Bridges. Anybody that's listening that maybe
Okay.
wants to know more about this. I
Sure.
mean, I want to know more about it. And
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
let's talk about that.
Bridges coaching. It's a number of the coaching culture class. You can read all about it on the website. I think I sent it to you. Yeah, so it's a very good, well done website actually. My wife has got a number of facilitators now, all over the country. Michelle Pavasars in California, April Lonneville in Warsaw, New York, Sarah Fulton in Lima, New York, I believe, and there's probably more that I don't know about.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's really good. April oversees now the Destiny by Design one. That's for people who are in transition and making decisions about their future.
Mm,
And the coaching
cool.
culture is basically about how to have more productive and powerful conversations with people, because people the, the most important thing, I think, for a person, especially a follower of Christ, is to understand who they are, who they've been made to be, their distinctive personality, and how and where they fit, on the rowing team, so to speak. Where do they fit in the kingdom of God?
Yeah.
And so coaching, I think, gives a person that you're coaching a sense of dignity, a sense of agency, a deep sense that they're being listened to.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think that's really, really important, because again, that conversation is three-way. It's the coach, it's the coachee, and it's the Holy Spirit. And this is certainly a Christ-centered coaching paradigm, and it's built on kingdom ethics, and the Word of God is, you know, spread throughout all the curriculum. So it's very good. It's all it's on video, and there and I think recently she just published a book called Traction. Yeah, it's called Traction, and that's a you could actually purchase that on Amazon, I believe, and
Awesome.
and actually self coach yourself by going through that workbook, sort of written in the venue of, like, if anybody remembers Henry Blackaby's Experiencing God, it's sort of like that. A little bit like that venue, but honestly, I think the best coaching, to get the most out of coaching, is actually to take the course with the facilitator, where you actually get to practice coaching. You're observed in some coaching. You bring a volunteer in that you coach, and you're critiqued in your coaching. And if you
Yeah.
actually keep going with it to a next level, my wife's hired a professional coaching, a Christian assessor, a guy out of Denver, and he's pretty brutal, but he's awesome. You know, I mean, he's really helped my wife's facilitators to reach whole new levels of coaching.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, if you want to grow, you know, if you're a pastor or a overseer of some sort where you have a lot of direct reports and stuff, it's fantastic training. I took all of her courses and got certified myself, and I wouldn't say it's sort of like chess, you know, you learn it in a day, but it takes a lifetime to really
Yeah.
understand it. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of those kind of practices. So
Hmm.
I hope that helps. Hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it really just seems like the whole coaching, you called it, coaching culture, or the
Hmm.
coaching paradigm, how it seems like it kind of like as you would walk through that and learn the different steps toward, leading people and having good conversations with people, productive, transformational conversations with people, like how that would just sort of automatically begin to be infused into your everyday life, into your
Hmm.
interactions with people. Do you see
Yeah.
that happening?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's still that idea of, you know, am I present in this conversation? Am I actually listening? You know, and watching body language and all of that, you know, to really attune myself to the person that I'm with. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
definitely helps a lot for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like the kind of thing that anybody could benefit from. I mean,
Hmm.
definitely people who have any kind of a leadership position, but anybody, because I mean, how much more growth would we have in our lives if we just learned how to listen?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's listening's hard. I don't know about you, but but listening, some people are naturally, I think, good listeners, but
Yeah.
listening is something that I have to work at. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I realized that I would just miss things in conversation.
Hmm. Yeah, you
Um,
don't have to be. You'd almost have to be living under a rock not to see how hard it is for people to listen, especially lately. You know, in the political atmosphere that we've had, and
for sure.
everybody polarizing to the right or to the left, and it's just sad. You know, there used to be. Well, I don't want to sound too traditional now, but I feel like there was more of a conversation in days past. You know,
Yeah.
where and there was more of a collaboration, but now it's like everybody's so separated. It's like, man, how are we going to get
Yeah.
some things done? You know, but God's using that too, because that's another trust structure that needs to be got out of the way, because politics aren't going to save us. You know, in the United States, I'm grateful to be an American. Absolutely. I love the freedom I have. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm a citizen of the kingdom of God. I got to remember that. We
Yes.
got to remember that, you know, and
Yeah.
so it's those values that really help people at the end of the day, you know. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I think there's definitely such a mentality of just like us versus them these
Hmm.
days, and like if you're not with me, you're against me. And
Yeah.
if we could, I've been preaching this throughout the pandemic and throughout
Uh-huh.
the
Yeah.
election cycle and all of that. Like
Good for
we
you.
could if we could learn how to have conversations, like just it's okay. Like if you disagree, someone disagrees with you, doesn't have to turn into a fight. It doesn't have to turn into an
Sure.
attack.
Sure.
We can have disagreements. We could work through some things, and maybe I see things that I didn't see before, and you see things that you didn't see before.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we just approach conversations. We approach people with preconceived ideas, with our own culture, with these other voices inside our head, with walls that are already built up, with certain maybe prejudices, maybe different
Yeah.
things that we don't even realize that they're there, and they really govern the way that we're able to hear and really listen and perceive what somebody is saying.
Exactly,
And
because
so,
we're in that like limbic place where we're just moving out of emotion, fight and flight, and we're not listening to each other because when you're in that mode, you're just not rational, and it's
yeah,
like just stop yourself, listen, and realize that there's probably more common ground, vaccinated or not vaccinated. Well,
right.
you know,
It's a big one.
probably it is. It's a big one, but probably both people are interested in safety, right?
Yes. Yeah,
That's the
true.
common ground. But are they actually going to find that common ground? Probably not, because they're
Probably
yelling
not.
at each other, So
Yeah.
it's just sad.
Yeah.
So,
Well, hey, so I do want to just confirm that the book Traction by Cindy Scott
oh,
is available on Amazon.
oh, nice.
Looked it up. So
Look at you,
yeah, check
double.
that out.
Yeah, you are like multi-purposing over there. Come on, that's great.
Well, I am a professional. I'm just kidding.
Duke, I
But
love you, man. Thanks so much for having me. I've really, I've really been enjoying this reconnection. And
yeah,
this,
me too. I really
yeah,
appreciate you coming on and really appreciate your time. It'd be awesome to do it again at some point. And
sure,
but for real, just awesome to reconnect with you, and hopefully maybe I don't know, one of these days we could find our way up there and get to see you guys again, or something
yeah.
like that. But
Get on a mountain somewhere and ski down
yeah,
a
it's
hill.
so
You can
flat where I
snowboard.
live.
You can snowboard now.
You
Oh yeah, Houston. You're not gonna find any skiing there. It's about as flat
no,
as a pancake.
no,
So
no. And like where I've been for the past 10 years, it's been crazy. I haven't been able to do so I went to my family. We went to visit my mom. She moved out. She's not there anymore, but she was living in
hmm
Reno,
oh, nice.
Nevada. And so we went out there just a couple days after Christmas. We went for about a week, and I got to do some snowboarding at
Oh,
Lake
nice.
Tahoe. And
Nice.
so it was my first time on a board in like more than a decade.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was awesome. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
you were
It
really
was so
good, as I
beautiful.
remember. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well,
All
I
right.
well, I don't know, but I did get back up there, and I had a great day, man.
Good
I
for
wasn't
you.
wiping out. I thought it was going to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
difficult. I thought I was going to be, I mean, I was a little bit sore because you use different muscle groups
hmm
than you normally use, but it wasn't that bad. Like it
Yeah.
really wasn't that bad. It was a great day. And yeah, I need to figure
Oh,
out, it's something
that's
that I really love, so I need to figure out how to do
how
it.
to get there. Yeah.
Do you still get out there and ski?
My kids got me into skate skiing. It's called skate skiing
Awesome. Yeah.
up in Rochester, but unfortunately, the snow does not stick here in Lancaster, so I'm pretty much cycling. I did get 5 days of cross country skiing and skate skiing in when we had a nice frost here and some snow, but it doesn't last long. So I miss Rochester for that reason and a lot more too
I
sometimes. So
gotcha. I
yep, yep,
gotcha. I
yep.
gotcha. Um, well, good,
Yeah.
my friend.
All
Again,
right.
thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate
Yeah,
you. Anybody listening, make
you're
sure you
good.
check out bridgescoaching.net if you're interested in connecting further or finding out more about these resources that I really, really, truly believe could have a major and profound impact on your life. So,
Yeah. All right.
Eric, thanks again, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. God bless you, dude.